Welcome back to Teens No Cap. I'm your host, Charity Chafee. I'm a licensed mental health counselor specializing in the treatment of teenagers in Massachusetts and the owner and founder of Teens Uncharted. And Teens Uncharted was created to support clinicians that are in practice and working and treating teenagers and their families. And I would love to have you. If you are a teen therapist, please join the community. I'll link it below. It's on Facebook, we're on Instagram, all the social medias, but I would love to have you a part of it. If you are also a parent who's managing kind of a high-risk behavior teen and wanting to support them, I have a sister group that's all focused on how do we parent and support them in the best, most effective way. So thank you for joining me. I'm so glad to be here. Today, I'm actually running through day 2 of a teen therapy conference. So if you missed part one was all about day 1 and talking about all of the different pieces that we had talked about and people were training on. And I think it's so important to have trainings and conferences that are specific to certain populations. So this is just one conference that's focused on teens, and I'm really hoping that there will be more in the future, because I do think that it was really cool to be able to sit in a room with people, all focus on the same population, all kind of like doing the work that needs to be done. And it was great to kind of get to connect and really see what other people are up to. So this is my quick rundown, and I'll go back through and I'll explain like some of these, because I do think that they're really good like tidbits of information. But on to day 2. So how and why when using tech, guides not guards, mentoring versus managing. Consequences are about steering them in the right direction, not about validating your feelings about their behavior. It's a big one. We'll talk more about it. The model minority myth, super cool concept, and reframing rebellion. So I'll be the first to say I got a little lazy on day 2 of taking notes, but the information was just really awesome, and I think validating for a lot of us who work with teens, because as you know, it's something that I've talked about before. There aren't a lot of trainings that are really just focused on teen specific issues. A lot of what I see is that they have teens that are kind of like blended in with children, or they have teens that are kind of encompassed with like adults. But teens are their own sub-separate, very specific population that are going through different stressors, different focuses, different developmental milestones, and additionally, different mental health presentations. So I think that if you are someone who works with teens a lot, or someone who has like teens on your caseload, or if you're interested in working with teens, it's really important that you actually attend conferences that support the work that people are doing and get training and continue to kind of evolve your skill set, because I know how helpful and important it can be to attend something like that. And I've been in practice for 15 years, and it's like awesome for me to see other people in person who are doing this work, and to know that I'm not like the only unicorn out there, and there are other people that love to see and work with teens as well. So really quickly, we're going to run through some of the bullet points that I had said. So there were a lot of great presentations, and again, I got lazy on my notes, but I wrote down some snapshots that I think were really helpful. So we had one presentation. I think his name was Chris Conley. I am Chris, I want to say. Super cool. I'd love to have him on the podcast at some point, but he was presenting on how to talk about tech with teens and how to like really understand and navigate that. And I think one of the things that I really appreciated about his presentation is that he talked a lot about how we assess teen screen usage, and it's actually more than just screen time. I know a lot of parents I work with will even be very cautious, and they're, kind of like eagle-eyed in terms of how much time their teens are using on different social media and on different apps and whatever. But as Chris pointed out, it's actually more important to understand how and why they're using tech versus just understanding the time limit. If you take it into example, like we could all be at the gym for 35 hours a week, right? But how are we using the gym, and what are we doing there, and what's our goal at the end of the day, right? If we're asking the same questions in terms of teen tech use, we're not just telling them what to do, but we're helping them build the decision-making skills that they need for themselves, and to build the awareness of how some of their own choices impact themselves. He had talked, and he had used this framework, which I really love, guides, not guards, which I think is really awesome, because I do think that there is a shift that happens when you go from parenting kind of like a child to a tween, and then again from a tween to a teen, where you're not so much managing their daily life anymore. You're not managing their decisions. You're not managing all of that. You are mentoring. And a big part of mentoring is knowing that there might be times where they make a bad decision. There might be times where they shoot themselves in the foot. There might be times where, that didn't land how they wanted it to, right? But again, failure is a learning opportunity if we can look at it like that. And it doesn't have to define us at the end of the day. What we choose to do about it can define us at the end of the day. But Chris used this example, guides, not guards, I thought was great. mentoring and managing, mentoring versus managing. And I do think that there is a really hard transition, particularly from like the tween to teen era, where you are no longer getting to manage your child. You are no longer getting to make decisions for them. You are being asked to step into a mentoring position, and you're giving up control with that. But when you do that, you're also showing that you trust your child, right? And I do the same thing with the teens I work with. I want them to know that I trust them instinctually, right? I trust their decision-making skills. I trust that they'll come to me when they, have something to talk about. It very much like we're stepping into a mentoring space with those older teens. Consequences are about steering them in the right direction, not about validating your feelings about their behavior. Yes. So I am on parent pages all the time, and I'm always seeing people being like, oh, I need to give a consequence to my kid. And, the other day I saw one where I guess this girl had made a bad decision and had essentially like called the school and told them something and got herself out of class. And the parent's response was to take away prom, which is happening the next day. And here's the thing. As a teenager, I remember making stupid decisions. I remember being like, oh crap, I shouldn't have done that. And I think we can extend that to our teens nowadays, is that we know they're going to make bad decisions. We know things are going to come up, they're going to be hard. But it doesn't mean that we can't also be supportive and give some grace. So for instance, I think in this moment when they took prom away, and I think when we're often thinking about consequences, we're only using how we feel in that moment and their behavior, right? But I would encourage anyone in teen therapists and parent alike to think about it more in terms of how we're feeling, how the teen is feeling, what information we have, why did they make the decision, what do they think about it now, right? And then to really discuss through how we can work on trust or honesty or respect or whatever the thing is, right? And then maybe instead of giving a consequence as a punishment in terms of missing prom, it's extra work, it's extra checks. There's other little pieces that are added in there, but we know that consequences routinely do not work for this population. But I think as parents, there's a space where we're like, well, that's my ability to control, right? But really what you're doing in that moment is you're making it about you and about like your feelings versus about it being a learning opportunity for a teenager. So loved that he had talked about that. I think it's really cool. They'd also talked a lot about not pathologizing the family system, which I thought was really great. I think that, we generally, I always talk about how teens are not, they're not in a vacuum. They're like very much connected to these like different systems and different families and different dynamics. And I think if we pathologize the entire system, we're like not giving them enough credit for everything that they've had to work through and like where each individual person is at. So, and they also talked about reframing rebellion, which I thought was pretty cool because I often think about the fact that like we see rebellion in different ways. And we see it in terms of trying to gain independence and in terms of trying to gain autonomy, in terms of trying to like make decisions for themselves and see how they pan out and to really like trust their gut instinct and to follow their own intuition. And so I think that people get really shocked by that, but I'm never shocked when it does it with a teen because I just feel like that is where they're at. And that's what they need to try. And again, it's going to do us more good to talk about like what's happening for them and to be really curious than it is to like shame the behavior and to tell them that they like shouldn't have done that. I will tell you in all my clinical work, when I am talking with someone who maybe made a bad decision and, whatever, and I'm asking them all these questions and I'm just like, tell me about this part of it and how did that feel for you and what was that like? And I would say like 90% of the time at the end of that conversation, they'll say, Charity, I know that that was a bad decision and I know that I shouldn't have done that. And I'm just like, yeah, okay. So what do you want to do going forward? What makes the most sense? Who do you have to apologize to? What repairs do you need to make? Teens can get there with the right support. And so I think when we're talking about literally any behavior, right? Most of the time, 90% of the time, they know that the thing they're doing is making it worse or is not going to have like the outcome that they want, but they need people to sit with them and to talk about it and to be curious and to discuss and ask good questions and to truly understand their perspective. And they'll get there. They always do at the end of the day. They will get there. So day 2 of the conference, can't talk today, was super great. They had just covered like a lot of really good information. And I think, I have talked about how there really aren't a lot of like teen trainings, and there really aren't. We're getting better now. There's more out there than there were, let's say, 5 years ago. But I think one thing that kind of came up for me at the conference and thinking about all of this is that like we're really only as strong as our weakest link. And so when I think about therapists, it brought me back to when I was supervising interns, and I loved supervising interns, right? I loved it. Because in my head, when I was supervising an intern, I knew, because of how small the dynamics are, because of how small the cities are, because of how like really close-knit the community is, I knew without a doubt that I was going to be interacting and working with and likely sharing clients with and, all this other stuff with the people that I supervised. And so when I was supervising my interns, I wanted to support interns that I wanted to work with. I wanted them so well trained that I was like, yep, cool, good. They're great, right? I know they know their stuff. And I think about that in terms of this teen conference, because I'm just like, if every teen therapist had access to really great consultation groups and really great trainings and really great kind of niche understandings, it would just make us that much stronger as a community, right? It would be a collective of information and resources and no gatekeeping and just lots of really great support, which really is where Teens Uncharted came from, right? Is wanting to support and help develop young clinicians and folks who have been in the field who want to make a pivot to working with teens, and to really give people space to talk about that. Because you deserve case consultation groups that are focused on your people. You deserve spaces where you can talk about the stuff that's pertinent to your population. You deserve spaces to vent about something that's happening and then figure out a plan forward, right? Every person who's working with anybody deserves that. But I think particularly because I noticed that there was a gap in the market in terms of like what therapists are getting support, what teen therapists are getting support, and how, I wanted to make that a thing. So to me, this weekend and talking about this conference was a lot of just like collaboration and community, right? Coming together and talking to people about how we talk about certain things and what's important to us. Like I had a great conversation with someone about tween dating, right? And like how we talk about that and how we, begin to understand and support parents in allowing their kids to make their own decisions. And it's really great because there are so many things that I say as a teen therapist that I heard at this conference, and I was like, yes, right? Like I'm not alone in this. But I almost guarantee you that if I said that at a conference that was like not really geared towards teens or was more maybe fixated on children, I'd get a lot of weird looks, and there wouldn't be a lot of people that would understand where I was coming from. So to me, the community and the connection was impeccable this past weekend. And I'm very excited because I'm speaking on the panel next year, all about harm reduction. So if you want to come, I know there's some tickets left, but not a ton. So they're selling out, and I'll link all that below as well, so you have it. But please consider attending or joining Teens Uncharted. I'd love to have you as part of our group. But I think the other thing that I often think about, and I have said this for a long time in my practice, is that, and going back to the whole idea of like we're only as strong as our weakest link, I think that there are a lot of other fields and a lot of other professions that people want to kind of be on the top. They want to win. They want to do everything. They want to, like own the real estate, right? And when I think about my practice and how I have like wanted to support other clinicians, again, it's like we're only as strong as our weakest link. I want you to have the best skills possible. I want you to have the best community possible. I want to elevate every single voice I can. Because we all have really good things to share about ourselves in treatment and, how we do and talk about different things and how we incorporate parents. And I think the more connected we are as a population that treats teens, the better our services are going to get, the better the parents are going to get, the better supports everyone is going to have access to. And so really for me, I want to see this space grow and build into space where we have so many resources and so much support, and people are really, able to chime in and add their 2 cents on different things and like have those really meaningful collaborative discussions. Because I know how much it means to me to be able to talk to someone about like working with teens, because there aren't a lot of people that focus on teens in the way that I do, but there are tons and tons and tons of people that do work with teens. And so even if you only have one teen on your caseload, I want you to come join us. I want you to join the consultations. I want you to have the support that is helpful and pertinent. So it's a short one today. I just wanted to kind of give a day 2 rundown. I'm still getting back into the swing of things with like work and being away, but I love any topics you want to hear about in the future, like drop those below. Or if there are questions or comments you have on any things I talked about, like please drop them below. But I'll add all the links for Teens Uncharted and for the Parenting High Risk Teen Support Group. So I hope you will join us at one of those, but stay in touch. I'll see you next time.